Hello and welcome to Connections, Forum for Relationships, Expression and Healing. And we are in episode 47 and we have as special guest Stefan Levin. Our show offers single episodes and short series of talks and interviews regarding the most important areas of human life, such as relationship issues, personal expression and self-development, and also cultural development and healing of all these areas. The purpose of our show is to give you inspiration and also to teach you new skills with which to handle the issues which are connected with our topics. Today, we move again into the category music. We already have talked about authentic voice and about singing and healing through singing and other topics about music in previous episodes. You can come back to our website, Hangout on Connections, and they are all archived. Today, we will address the capacities of sound and silence. So don't be afraid when you listen and you don't hear anything. We will experience also silence. Before we introduce Stefan, some information about us, our hosts. I'm Heidi Hornlein from The Power of Relationship. I'm a transformational coach, a relationship counselor, and I'm a voice therapist and voice coach. I work with people who don't feel yet fully realized in their life, and I help them to explore their full potential and to find their authentic voice in all the meanings of this word. I'm the founder of Paradiso Integrale. This is a virtual and a physical space in Italy where I welcome you as a guest with Mark, my husband. And we hold retreats and courses live and also online. And I'm also the host of several HOA shows like the Wisdom Factory. And I think I have talked enough about myself. So now to you, Margherita.
Hello, I'm Margherita Crystal Lotus. And I am a life and business mentor who help professional women that are stressed and have some emotional issues that they want to solve. And I also have a retreat center here in Kingston, Ontario, where I invite private clients for private retreats. So I am so excited, and it's a very great pleasure to introduce Stefan Levin. But first, let me talk a little bit about what the background is. The topic is sounds and silence. And so sort of the pause in the constant chatter will interrupt the mind far more effective than increasing the volume. And to create transformative music, the silence is the best tool to present carefully placed notes. In this episode, Swedish composer Stefan Levin is interviewed here, where we discuss how silence affects the experience of listening. So Stefan is a prolific creator of performance and ballet music for film, and other works in a style he called Nordic Noir. His compositions has an international following and recently been performed in New York, Havana, Amsterdam, and Venice. He is born in Sweden with a background as a classical guitarist, soloist, guitar teacher, and has a keen interest in reflecting the silence and sounds in nature. One of his current projects is called House of Silence, a community project with the purpose to create different sound rooms where people can go and experience what silence and sounds really means by experiencing them. The benefit, he says, is to actually learn how to listen, reflect upon, and how to enjoy our sound experience. So Stefan is married with my baby sister Gunilla Hammar, who is a world-renowned ballet dancer, and they have two lovely daughters who are also into the musical scene. Stefan.
Hi.
Did I miss something there?
I thought you got it. You got it really well. of course, there are so much. This is a huge topic that we are about to enter. So I'll come with more information and more thoughts about this very exciting topic.
So, Stefan, how did you? I mean, you are a very amazing composer. I know. I heard many kinds of music that you have created. So, how did you start your career in music?
It all started with the guitar. I was hooked with the guitar when I was like old and started to practice like mad because I thought the sound, the acoustic sound, I started with acoustic guitar that then turned into classical guitar, and something with strings and wood responding to my body. I have this strong memory of the feeling of an instrument connects to my body and I can bring out sounds from it, and this fascination from also as a kid I could sit by the radio and just listen to different waveforms, you know, like a space sounds, not people talking, just in between the channels. That I found so fascinating. So my fascination is about all different sounds and how they affect me and how it is huge because sounds affects our senses, emotions, dreams, thoughts, imaginations. Sound can be, it's really a big world.
Yeah, and this project that you have started, the House of Silence, tell us a little bit of the background, why you actually created that.
Yeah, it all started with, in fact, I organized a little festival at the countryside where we have our summer house. And then I brought musicians from big cities like Stockholm, Berlin, and we all came together, made concerts. But of course it was hard to get an audience there. So when I was sitting there one night, listening to the silence, because this is a place where you really can experience silence. And I thought, I want to take this silence with me back to Stockholm, where I live, where it's quite noisy, like in all bigger cities. And wouldn't that be a fantastic thing to have an eye-catching how do you say it?
Architectural building, yeah.
Building that where no noise are represented. You can go in there just in the middle of any big town in the world. I would like to have this opportunity to go in to a quiet room, to a quiet environment, and just this oasis where you can think, meditate, relax, be inspired, create, or just fall asleep in peace if that's the need you have. Because these spots are getting so unusual to find nowadays with all flight traffic and all noise we have around us. So I think we have to create areas in the society where you can actively go and have your silence.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to being in a city. I don't live really in a city. I live outside on the country, right? And it's normally very quiet here. But every time I go into Toronto, for example, there is constant noise all the time, and it's like a background thing that is like it builds up on it, and afterwards, after a couple of days in the city, I feel like blah, and so I want to go back out and come back home and hear that. Don't hear that background sounds.
And it's more deep than just sounds coming towards you, because now we know that it affects our respiratory, our stomach, our heart pace, our muscular reactions, blood vessels, hormones, sleep rhythm. So sound is much more. It's not just to try to get rid of them, or it affects us whether we like it or not. So it's also a health issue, I would say.
Yeah, and then for
I would like to ask a question. Is it not also dependent of what the quality of these sounds are? Because some sounds can be really, really relaxing, and others, and also the thing how we react, how our pattern of reaction to these sounds are. When I, for instance, don't like cars and I hear a car coming by, then I get angry and hear it even more. But if I'm indifferent to cars, so I don't even hear it when it passes by. So as a question, depend on the quality and on your own attitude toward the specific sounds you are hearing.
Yeah, I think we should separate maybe noise from sounds. As noise, what I call sounds that you can't control, and that sounds that also shrinks my space. Something that breaks into my peace, which, like, if I have a neighbor playing very loud, I feel what it does the music, his music or her music, doing in my living room. It affects my space, even if I might like the tune. So it's still something that I can't control, and that affects us in a way, I think. And I think you can also, like you're saying, you can create a way of dealing with the sounds coming to you. And I would like later on to give some exercises how we can be more aware of listening to sounds.
Yeah,
that might be
I would
helpful.
like to, I don't know, maybe it's the right moment now. I want to say that my relationship to noises and to sound has completely changed in 2004 when the film of Evelyn Glennie came out, Touch the Sound. I don't know if you know that. And she taught me how to hear the music in the most strange noises. So it was really eye-opening and mind-blowing to listen in a different way without prejudice on what is horrible and what is good. Just as an insertion, it was very important for me.
Yes, and I think also during my years in Berlin, I love to go out to very loud places, but I put something in my ears and go for like a rave party or something, just to have this like a massage for your body with the deep bass sounds. I also went to a couple of discos just for deaf people, and putting a lot of stuff in my ear and just dance with deaf people through bass sounds, to have your body, which has nothing to do with, that's your body noise, where the body listens. There's nothing to do maybe to hearing the different layers in music, but it has an other quality, which I also like.
So what do you suggest, Stefan, for somebody who is sort of listening to music? How can silence be introduced, and so that they can understand, or we can understand, what actually silence does for a piece of music?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a teacher in composition in Italy when I started, and we sat there in his studio, and we had a blank sheet of sheet music, a score, which was white. And then he said, it must be with biggest motivation you will break the silence, and by placing a note there. That should be considered before you do it, because everything derives from silence. So you should really be, and we have a lot of sounds, we have a lot of music, so you should really be aware, why do you like to put dots on this note paper? And of course I got a little bit stressed over this, one note, that must be the note, but after a while I really got into a thinking which was more, how to say, aware of reducing things. I mean, the older I get, the less notes my music contains, and that's not because I have less to say nowadays, but I think I can say it with less tones. And dream is, of course, to connect silence into composition. I'm not there yet, because that has to be done in a very like, if you write, I prefer, or what I like is to listening for aiming for long lines without interruption. that can also, I mean, music can almost be heard as silence if you do very slow-moving things that can be something that reminds us of silence. Because, of course, you can do like a John Cage piece where silence is a reaction on all, or sharpens our ears, what's going on all around us in a concert hall. That's his concept. But after that, it's really hard as a composer just sending away 12 minutes of silence with my name under, and call it and get it on iTunes, for instance. It would be I had so many of those ideas like 10, 20 years ago. Like I think I would buy a CD with silence if I know that was silence from southern Sweden that I recorded, that I can listen to when I'm in Hong Kong on a hotel room. Wouldn't that be nice to have this silence with me?
What a great idea, right? But what kind of so how long silence? How long period of time can a person tolerate silence before they get all over the place and want to go to the next things? And what is that? Go to the next things. Oh, okay, I can't hear anything, and then what's now? What is that in a person? What is that in a person that drives us to hear the next thing? So it's uncomfortable, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Oh, that's also depending on if we are in a conversation like now, then speak where the rule is to speak to each other. If I'm not speaking, I'm still communicative because I'm not saying anything, and we know the embarrassing silence, or I mean, it's also used for torture. We should not forget that to isolate your when it's not chosen by yourself. And on radio or television, we have like the 7-second rule. When it's quiet more than 7 seconds, you'll change channel because something went wrong there. And I see now with music, I read somewhere with all those streaming services that we have, where you can listen to all music, and you never listen to a full song anymore, or the most of the songs that are played on those services are not from beginning to end, because you go directly, you searching all the time for something that you need exactly now. So there is no time to get into things. It's rather the quickest way to my feeling, not what maybe another one tries to communicate to you. Is that understandable?
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there, because very great music and has this capacity to spellbind us. And if we stay long enough, we can actually communicate with the music. But as this having the remote control on the TV, you're flicking the channels, you never really, you catch the one thing that catches your moment in that moment, but you really never rest. You get more agitated, in my opinion. So how can a piece of composition remedy that?
The thing you said right now about music, I think it's exactly the same for silence. How many minutes or seconds can we sit down before we want to do something else? And that takes a very long time to get somewhere else with yourself in silence. That's what I'm talking about, long lines that you have to really to see to not interrupt your longer views or thoughts, that you should go to it really ends. And I have a good exercise that I like to do when I'm on the countryside. There's a little brook, and we all now know the sound of a brook, like the whirling. How would you describe it? When this is a small river. That's a brook, huh? In English,
Yeah.
just to be sure. And we have a picture or a sound imagination sounds. But when you go there, you sit down and start to listen, you'll notice there is several sources that together brings this sound that we call the sound of a brook. And you can do exercises by sitting there, try to listen to one source, maybe the one who's closest to you will appear, but then you can stretch your hearing to 2 sources and hear them at the same time, to 3 sources. I've exercised a little bit, so maybe I can hear 6 or 7 different sources. I can divide them into spots and locate them with my ears, the distance, and together they form this sound. When I just listen without a bigger concentration, they melt together as one sound. But you can practice to hear really the sources, the different sources that together makes this sound together. And when practicing in nature, that's really easy. Then you go to a Bach fugue or a big symphony, then you can use this hearing for all the different layers and instruments playing, and yeah, that's one way to sharpen your listening ears.
It's a very good suggestion, because when I had a choir, directed a choir, and I was never really, I mean, never is not really true, but often I was not aware which voice was the one which is a little bit out of tone, you know. So my hearing was more like a cluster and not a linear hearing, so for every little line. So this is a very good exercise to learn to listen to it. I did it by following one voice and then following the other voice and trying to hear both of them. I mean, this is also an exercise, but in nature gives you so much possibilities to listen, and we never think about it. I wanted to say some other things. I think in the last 10 years, the attention span collectively has gone down quite a bit. So people sort of get annoyed immediately. To stick with one thing, the capacity is ever less unless we are practicing it. But it doesn't seem to be really a goal for people of today to be so concentrated and to really listen. How could we induce them to want to listen again? What is the benefit of silence?
I think first of all, silence is not absence of speech or sound. It's something else that one has to see as a source to very much, like I said before, like the relaxation, inspiration, creativeness, and everything that comes with when not focusing on because we do focus on sounds because we have to shut them out or take them away in order to be concentrated, and if you have the possibility to experience silence, which is, like I said, when you live in a city, it's really hard to find those places. Even in an apartment, I hear cars and so on, and of course, I think it has with to be, what's the English word?
Concentrated on one source or something.
Yeah, but also to be patient about. I mean, we live in a informative world where, like now, when I looking for a word, it takes time, 5 seconds. What's that in our lifetime? So we're not. We want. I think it's too effective the way our relationship to sounds. They should tell us something quickly that I feel good about, or they're too close to fill our needs. I think that silence is also good because you have to start to look for something in this silence, and of course you have to meet yourself, which could also be hard for many people.
I think that is the reason why people sort of shrink back, because they don't want to look at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of finding something horrible, which almost never is the case, by the way.
No, and that's the way we use music a lot also. Just put on the right tune to get in the right mood. So it's, yeah, it's...
Which is a good capacity of music, isn't it? We can
It is.
have music for every mood we want, and it leads
Yes.
us there, and we could choose. And even the music, as you say, for going into silence.
Yeah.
I'm very curious. I heard the trailer with your music. I liked it very, very, very much.
Oh, thank you. Wasn't
And
that?
I'm looking
Yeah, sorry.
looking forward if you do some concerts live on Google Hangouts. Would be wonderful. I'm in the
that's a
first
good
row. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I've been thinking of, it's to hear the nuances of different sounds, or can also be daily life sound, that we exercise our ears really to hear the difference between sounds. There's so many sounds that we think they are the same, because like a door slams or somebody shuts the door, that's the sound of a door shutting. Every door has a sound, a tone, and I mean, I'm maybe how to say, obsessed with I listen to sound very specific. Like when I go to a party, I can bring I can have the question, do you like to play this game with me? Then I pick up my keys, and this has a very special sound that I hear every day, maybe 3-4 times a day when locking, and then all friends bring their keychains and we put them on the floor, and then they turn away from the keys, and I pick up one pair of keys and do like this. Whose keys are this? Just to see do you know the sound of your own keys, which you maybe have for 10 years? Just to be aware of what sound do you have around you in your daily life. And you can try it yourself. I promise that it's not easy to separate your sound from another keychain, even if they really sound different. Every keychain has its timbre, its tone, and so on. It's also a good way to practice the nuances of timbre and sound and so on.
Wonderful. You know what we do? We have 6 cats at the moment. We had 10 before, and every cat has a different meow. So
Yeah.
I'm practicing to listen. Oh, this is Lucy, and this one is Sunny.
That's good. That's good.
I have a question for you, Stefan, and that is, when people are performing, like say, all speaking, singing, or playing an instrument, there is always a hesitation for beginners to actually perform in public. Is this because of that they haven't really heard themselves? And what do you say about that?
You mean the what do you call it then? You mean why are we nervous when performing, or?
Yeah, like what triggers us inside? Is there a difference with our own perception of how we feel we are speaking or sounding or playing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I went from classical music, where the ideal is to have an interpretation in this style. If it's a Baroque piece or if it's a Romantic piece, you try to get into this era and the aesthetics of that time. And I gave up that after a time, because I couldn't find. I wanted to do something that I felt really free with, and that's the project I'm doing now with my friend Hans Nyman. We go into the studio and we don't speak, and we don't rehearse before. We don't talk about what's coming out. So the guitar piece you have here on the presentation is made without any scores or decisions or talking before. That kind of thing you could do together with a musician that I've known for 35 years. Then you don't need to talk. You can and never. never be judged as this was not good or that sounded strange, because it sounds just where we are in our lives and with the capacity we have on the guitars and so on. But that's for the first time I felt this is a fantastic way to make music, just to try to avoid all the cliches and all what you had in your fingers, because I stopped playing guitar quite many years ago, and I'm happy to come back because they have forgotten all the old things that just came out from the fingers. And that led me into a new way of thinking of performing, just to go on stage. Don't be nervous, because we're not going to sound like we did yesterday, because there's no goal in to refine one piece to perfection, but it's a goal to see who am I today with experience from yesterday, that I'll add something every day in my life. And that opened up for me a new way to make music live as a musician, because I've just been composing for other musicians and still do, with a lot of notes and scores and so on. But this is a way that I like to explore as a new way. I mean, yeah.
Can I ask a question? This is self-expression, and I love it. I think I'm myself classical musician, and there's too much restriction in the perfectionism, and I like to improvise too. But isn't it only for ourselves? What does the audience get out of your daily moment expression?
I think as a musician, you have to believe that you have something to communicate, to give out, that can affect another human in the audience. So, and with the guitar, it has something also, like I'm still fascinated about, like when I was 12, about just the nail or the flesh and the string and wood, something resonating. For me, I would be very happy just to go to concert. Somebody walks in with a huge guitar, and he waits maybe 5 minutes, and then he just boom, plays one note, and then it fades for a half minute, and that's it. And then I go home. Just to you see what I mean? I don't need 140,000 notes for one evening. I'm quite okay with some well-picked notes in right space in right time, just to have this, exclusive feeling of I heard that note, it took me, it hit me, and I got it responded in me. So I'm really into like the theme to go from music into silence. I think maybe in the end of my career I have no needs for more notes. It's going to be more and more quiet.
So what I'm hearing you say, probably you can correct me if I interpret that in the wrong way, but you are sort of setting the field, setting the context for what can arise. And so even if you have played only one sound, but you were waiting, you have created the energy field of the music to come or not to come, and you get the audience into your field, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you do your note, one or two, or how many there are, and the audience can come with you or not. And this is your effect on the audience. Is it like that?
I like the idea that the audience is really invited to take part of those few notes that I will play for an evening. Now it's just an experiment, but in comparison to the classical way of making concert, the musician is there and he will play some thousand notes, and I will appreciate if it's a good interpretation, but it's really a one-way communication on a repertoire that I have an idea of how it will sound when it's well played. So the other way around is, this is not about if it's it's a timing and the way you play this tone, and also I would say the space and timing, which is in my life right now the most important things. So I can really think it's too many notes when I go to a concert nowadays. I had to sit like this because they're coming against me all the time. The better to collect all those to maybe 2-3 bigger notes and then sending it out. So I have time for reflection, but of course, different genres, different setups in our vad heter det, överenskommelse?
Agreements.
Agreements, of course.
Yeah, and different needs of the people. They want different things.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes they want only perfection, and even if there's no heart in the music, but it's perfect, or the coloratures are perfect, but the voice can be horrible. Or the high C. In Italy, they have the high C, the tenors, the warriors of the high C. When they get it can be really horrible. The rest of the aria can be horrible, but people...
I got it. No, but I can be fascinated with people that practice so much for everything. I have a friend who just recorded the Paganini Capricci, and I can really be moved by his also interpretation and this style that is perfection in a way of when you do it musically fantastic. Then it's like an overhuman thing. That how can you get this from just fingers and still strings and a piece of wood? That's. But I think my aesthetic is going the other way. Not to. I love to play when I was younger. When I was a concert guitarist, the most difficult pieces in a rapid speed and all the virtuos repertoire. I loved it because the fingers were you felt busy and so on. But I slow down. Really, every decade gets slower, and I start to listen. And now silence is a big. For me, the way where I find new ideas, where I can recreate and be inspired. I don't find it in music when I listen to other people's music. I find it in complete silence.
So when we talk about different compositional works that you've done, for example, ballet music, there is like pauses in the movement, right? We can understand that. And so how would you approach somebody who, or in a film piece, so are you listening to the silences first and then compose? How do you compose for that?
I give an example. I did a ballet like 10 years ago, which had a 10 minutes noise, a build-up noise, which was for the body. It wasn't strong in for the listeners, but it was a deep sound which you felt with your body, which could result in people talking in the audience. It's really loud here, but it isn't. But because it's so, and you hear the voices perfectly because it's not that range. And I love the idea. I did this an experiment. It's like the music has sunken under the stage, and the dancers are the instruments, because I felt there's too many notes going on between the dancers. So I just put it all down under the stage, and then it's a big crescendo, and it's really strong. I mean, the opera starts to shake a little bit in the seats and so on. But then we cut it, and then we have at one point silence, like a 2-minute solo in silence. And of course, silence after being attacked with a noise that I decided to create. That contrast is, of course, really effective. And I didn't compose the silence, but of course I composed the opposite in order to really to feel this relief when it comes. Listen to this much silence you never heard. So it's in context, of course. But I'm working on a piece right now which is really soft and not even audible if you don't have you have to turn up the volume a lot. And I also do this miniature scores. They're just like this big, so you have to get close to the music, to the notes. What is this, in order to get a focus? Because as you said in the beginning, it's not about turn up the volume and write even more notes in order to get a listener to your music. It's to invite them in a very small world that is big when you come close. So that's a project I work with now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That the sound is so important, even in video and anywhere on the internet. for example, like we're on a Hangout, if we don't have good sound, then people don't want to watch it, right? It has less to do with the video in that case. So sound is really, really important. And what you've said here is really, really profound, I think. And I don't know, Heidi, do you have another question for Stefan before we close?
For me, it was only the idea that music without silence is not music. Because it's only noise. We were talking about noise and music. For me, a continuum of some sound, it's not anymore music if there is not a differentiation. But what do you think? Yeah.
And also remember that music derives from silence. That's the all music. So it's just an interruption of silence. I mean, it's a beautiful art, music, but to be really philosophical about it, it's just music is an interruption of silence, which is the surface for everything we experience, and that's why it is so important to go back every now and then to this source of everything else, silence, conversations, everything that we do together. So we have to find our voice. We have to find our sound world inside ourselves in silence in order to know what can communicate to us in a way. And I would really like to invite people to do those exercises, just the daily. It's like a workout for your ears, that you sharpen your ears and you will hear so much more, not only more sounds, but you will hear what people are telling you. You will hear nuances in different ways in conversations, and also what a pause is in a conversation. And there's so many things, there's so much wisdom we can get out from exercising our listening and hearing.
Thank you. I fully agree. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So my takeaway here is that, yeah, I'm going to think about silence, and then actually have a increased silence in my mind, first of all, and then I can focus on, like you said, on the brook, that you can listen on this water. Where is these individual sounds coming from? That was really helpful for me. So I'm going to do that, actually. And Stefan, where can people connect with you? Can you tell us how people can contact you?
Yeah, I think the homepage is down on and there is a contact form on the homepage if you like to connect, or just put info at stefanlevin.com if you like to send a mail or have more questions. And this is such a huge topic. I think we have to continue now we've been into the many different fields, and I think we should do one program for every individual field that we just touched today. In my world, so feel free. It's info@stefanlevin.com if you have questions.
Okay.
And we should do music together. Maybe when it's very little sounds, we can do it even on the Hangouts together, being in 3 different countries, far away from each other.
That would be now with the wireless thing. If one has a stable thing, I would really invite you to the country place and going into the forest and sit there for a hangout. Maybe play when this brook is and do something together outside the electronic indoor world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we will probably be very happy to have you back, Stefan. It's a very, very interesting topic, and if we could bring each one of us a little instrument or a voice to do a sort of improvisation, that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Let's do it. Not today, because we're at the end. We're at 45 minutes, which is our limit. So thank you very much for having been our guest. I'm really happy to get to know you. and your music.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I had a good time here talking to you.
Good. It was a good, new ideas coming up with what you said. It was really good. And so next week we will have the last podcast before the holiday season, and we will have Pamela Zeman talking about healthy food. We did that in the last session with Marianne West last week, and we will continue, but a completely different thing. Pamela Zeman is a chef, and she will talk about how to prepare healthy food. Okay? So thank you very much, everybody, and see you next week.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week.